Have you ever felt invisible, even in your own home? This isn't just a story about marriage. It's about rediscovering the parts of yourself you thought were long gone, and what happens when a stranger sees them before you do. Before we dive in, if you believe that real stories can heal, connect, and sometimes even change us, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who might need it. Now, let me tell you how it all began. One quiet autumn afternoon in 1997, I was 48 that fall. The air in Savannah, Georgia was crisp and dry, with the faint scent of pine and old brick, the kind of smell that reminds you time is always passing. My daughter Grace had just left for college. The day she pulled out of the driveway, something in the house shifted. It didn't feel like home anymore. Mark, my husband, was still there, in body. But we hadn't truly spoken in weeks, maybe longer. We moved around each other like well-trained ghosts. Once we were in love. He used to write me notes, bring home records from little shops downtown. We would dance barefoot in the kitchen. Now we shared quiet dinners and polite questions like, "Did you pay the water bill?" I used to be a painter. I gave that up when Grace was born. I told myself I'd come back to it someday. But someday kept slipping further and further away. I didn't hate my life, but I couldn't recognize myself in it anymore. This isn't a story about cheating. It's a story about loneliness and remembering that you're still alive. The house we lived in was old Southern and stubborn. It had tall white columns, cracked porch steps, and wooden shutters that creaked when the wind passed through the trees. The kind of house that held whispers in its walls of laughter, of fights of life. Around it, overgrown hedges, wild ivy, and a once beautiful garden that now looked more like a ghost story than a sanctuary. My mother had planted that garden. Roses, lavender, camellias, and ivy trained carefully over arched trellises. After she passed, no one kept it alive. Mark had talked about hiring help for years, but he finally did it that September. He found someone through a friend of a friend. His name was Andre. I remember the first time I saw him. I was in the sunroom folding laundry when I caught movement through the window. There he was, tall, strong skin, the color of dark cedar, wearing a navy shirt damp with sweat. He was pulling weeds near the rose bushes, humming softly to himself in a low melodic rhythm. When I stepped outside, he stood up and nodded with a warm smile. "Mornin', ma'am," he said in a soft Jamaican accent that rolled like music over gravel. "Morning," I replied, caught off guard by something I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the way he held my gaze. Not too long, not disrespectfully, just present. Like he saw me. Not just the woman who lived in the house. Not someone's wife. He didn't look at me like I belonged to someone. He looked at me like I belonged to myself. And in that moment, in that quiet, fleeting moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Noticed. That's all it was. Just a glance, a greeting, a presence. But it stayed with me. Long after I went back inside, I still felt the way his voice lingered, the way the air around him seemed just a little more alive. I told myself I was just being silly. But deep down, I knew something had just shifted. The days passed quietly, like leaves drifting in the wind. Andre came twice a week, always in the early morning. I never asked why he worked so early. Maybe it was to avoid the heat. Maybe it was just the way he preferred the world still soft, half asleep. I started making excuses to linger near the window, folding laundry slower, rearranging the spice rack by the kitchen sink, always with a view of the garden. He would hum while he worked. low and melodic, sometimes reggae, sometimes something that sounded older, almost like prayer. Some mornings, I'd step outside with a cup of tea. He'd greet me with a gentle nod. Our conversations were brief. Weather, the soil, the best way to prune roses in late October. One day, I asked about Jamaica. He told me about Montego Bay, where he grew up, about his grandmother who raised him, about the sea that smelled like salt and mangoes, and how sometimes he missed the way the rain felt warmer there. I asked if he ever wanted to go back. Maybe he said, but there are things here worth staying for too. That afternoon, I found myself sketching for the first time in years. Nothing fancy, just the way the light hit the ivy along the fence. But my hands remembered. A few days later, he saw the sketch pad on the porch table. "You draw?" he asked. I nodded, suddenly shy. "Used to." He didn't say much, just looked at the page for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Don't stop." I hadn't heard those words in a long time. Not said like that. Not like they mattered. Then one Thursday evening, Mark was out of town. A work trip to Atlanta. The house felt too big, too quiet. I stepped outside to get some air, and there he was. Andre, kneeling near the lavender gathering tools. He looked up, smiled. "Evening, ma'am." Evening. I don't know why I stayed standing there, or why I didn't go back inside. Then he said it. Simple, gentle. "Would you like to take a walk through your garden?" It was nothing, really. Just a sentence, but it hung in the air like fog. Soft. Dangerous. I nodded, without thinking. We walked slowly, past the roses, along the back fence. Neither of us spoke. But the silence was full, charged. He didn't touch me. I didn't touch him. But every step felt like a conversation. When we reached the far corner, where the camellias still bloomed despite the season, he turned to me. His voice was low. "I hope you still dream," he said. I didn't answer. But something in me stirred. I wasn't sure if I still knew how to. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, the kind that echoes. I kept thinking about the way Andre had looked at me. Not with desire, not with pity, just human attention, pure and undivided. I hadn't felt that in years. Not from Mark, not from anyone. I used to believe marriage was about becoming two people folding into a life together. But somewhere along the way, I had folded myself so many times. I disappeared. I stared out the window, at the moonlight spilling across the backyard. And for a moment, I imagined what it would be like to just walk. Not away from Mark, but toward myself. I whispered into the dark, "I'm not okay." And the words tasted like truth, raw, bitter, and freeing. I wasn't okay. I felt invisible. And the most painful part, I didn't even know when it started. The next morning, Andre came back. I watched him from the window again. But this time, it wasn't quiet admiration. It was ache. When he saw me, he didn't wave. He just nodded. And somehow, that small gesture carried everything I couldn't say. I stepped outside. He paused his work, looking at me with that same calm steadiness. "Are you all right?" he asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to lie to brush it off. But the truth rose up like a wave. "I don't know," I said. My voice cracked. I looked away. "I don't want to hurt anyone," I added. "I'm not trying to betray anything." Then I said the part that had been clawing at me all night. I just want to feel alive again." Andre, didn't answer right away. He just stood there, letting the silence settle. And somehow, that made me feel less alone. Mark left again that Tuesday morning. A last-minute conference in Charleston. He kissed my cheek out of habit and grabbed his overnight bag without looking back. I watched his taillights disappear down the driveway. And then I was alone. Again. The house once filled with Grace's laughter and music now felt like a hotel room no one wanted to check into. That afternoon, just as the sun began to slip behind the pecan trees, there was a knock on the door. I opened it. Andre stood there not in his work clothes this time, but in a soft charcoal shirt that clung gently to his shoulders. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes steady. "Evenin', Eleanor," he said. I nodded, heart ticking a little faster. "Would you like to take that walk again?" He didn't smile when he asked. He didn't need to. I knew this wasn't about the garden. I said yes. We didn't speak as we walked. The light had turned gold, then pink, casting long shadows across the yard. This time, we didn't stop at the rose bushes or the lavender. We kept walking past the back trellis, down the narrow path behind the hedges, until we reached the old pond. It was quiet there, the water still reflecting the last blush of sunset. A few crickets chirped from somewhere nearby. Andre sat on the edge of a low stone wall. I stood beside him, arms folded, unsure what to do with my hands. Then he spoke. "My mother used to work 2 jobs. Sometimes 3, he said, voice low. She never asked for anything. She just kept going. Quiet. Strong." I looked at him. He didn't look at me. He was staring at the water. "When she died," he continued, "I realized no one ever asked her what she wanted, what she dreamed about. She never said." He finally turned. "You remind me of her," he said. "Because I'm quiet?" I asked, almost laughing. "No," he said softly. "Because I can see it. You're living a life that doesn't fit you anymore." I didn't reply. I couldn't. He stood, slowly stepped closer. We were inches apart. My breath caught. My heart thundered. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he whispered. "But I won't lie. I've been thinking about this. About you." His hand brushed mine. Just lightly. Barely a touch. I should have walked away. But I didn't. His fingers reached for my cheek, soft and deliberate. I closed my eyes. When his lips touched mine, it wasn't rushed. It was like a memory I'd never lived before, slow, warm, and filled with something I didn't know I'd been starving for. We didn't speak. The kiss lasted only seconds, but something inside me cracked open. For the first time in a very, very long time, I felt alive. The kiss had barely ended. We stood there, still close, the air between us, warm and trembling. My heart hadn't caught up with my breath yet. And then headlights. The crunch of gravel. Mark's car. My body moved before my mind did. I turned away from Andre, stumbling slightly as I slipped through the back path toward the house. My fingers trembled as I reached the porch steps. I didn't look back, but I felt him behind me, his presence still wrapped around my skin. Inside, I could hear the front door opening, Mark calling out, "Honey." I ducked through the back door, heart slamming in my chest like a warning bell. The house was dim and still. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I stood there for a moment, breathing hard, afraid that the air itself would tell on me. Outside, through the sheer curtains, I saw Andre, still by his car. He wasn't moving, just standing, hands in his pockets, eyes on the house. He didn't look angry. He didn't look sad. Just steady. As if he knew exactly where I was and exactly what I was feeling. I opened the back door, slightly stepping out onto the porch. The cool air hit my face like a slap. Andre took one step forward. He reached out and gently brushed his fingers against mine. The lightest touch, but I felt it like a thunderclap. "I'll wait," he whispered. And then he turned, walked to his car, drove off into the night without looking back. I stood there frozen, caught between two worlds, one built on years of familiarity and the other built on the terrifying possibility of being seen. The house smelled like roast chicken and lemon-scented cleaner when I walked back in. Mark was in the kitchen setting the table. "Hey, you okay?" He asked, his voice casual but his eyes sharp. I forced a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, though his brows pinched slightly. We sat down to dinner. He asked about my day. I said something about the laundry and the weather. He talked about meetings, someone from Charleston, something about budgeting. I wasn't really listening. I couldn't. Every word felt like it came from a movie I'd seen too many times. I looked at him across the table, the man I had shared 2 decades with. And for the first time in a long while, I really saw him. The graying at his temples, the slight sag at his jaw, the tiredness in his eyes he tried to hide behind facts and figures. He looked older than I remembered, or maybe I just hadn't been looking. A pang of guilt hit me so fast it felt like a punch to the chest. I picked at my food, said something about needing to lie down. He offered to bring me tea. I said no gently. Upstairs in the bedroom, we had once made love and laughed and argued in. I sat alone on the edge of the bed. My phone buzzed. A message from Andre. "So, is it over? Or is it just beginning?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. My heart beat loud in my ears. I didn't know the answer. Maybe both were true. The next night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the echo of Andre's words in my head. "Is it over? Or just beginning?" I didn't reply. I didn't delete the message either. Sometime after midnight, I crept downstairs to get water. The house was still, but I could feel something in the air thick like waiting. As I walked past the living room, I noticed the bedroom door was slightly ajar. The hallway light cast a sliver of gold onto the carpet, and in the shadows, a figure. Mark, standing, still, watching me. My heart lurched. My body froze. "Mark," he didn't answer, just looked at me. His face was unreadable, not angry, not confused, just searching. His eyes scanned my face, as if trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't realized existed. I stepped forward, then stopped. "How long? Have you been standing there?" Still no reply. Just silence. The kind of silence that says everything, that chokes, that judges, that knows. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to lie, to confess, but no words came. Just the sound of my breath, shallow shaking. Mark blinked once. Then he turned, walked back into the room, and closed the door. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Mark's breathing, slow, steady, distant. 2 people in one bed, but miles apart. I kept asking myself, when did we stop being us? Not during a fight. Not over some big betrayal, but quietly, like a house sinking an inch at a time. The hardest part isn't what I did. It's what I realized. That I had been living on autopilot. That I had become a supporting character in my own story. Andre didn't awaken something new in me. He reminded me of something old, something buried. That I used to laugh louder, dream bigger. That I used to matter to myself. I didn't leave Mark. I didn't run to Andre. I just stayed. In the middle. Half woman, half ghost. Maybe that's the worst place to be. Not choosing. Not moving. Just remembering what it felt like to be alive and not knowing what to do with that knowledge. So if you ask me how this story ends, I don't know. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe this is the part where it really begins. If you've ever felt the way I did, like your life is happening around you, but not really with you, then I hope this story reminded you of something. You're not alone. And maybe it's not too late to feel alive again. If my story meant something to you, leave a comment. Tell me, when was the last time you truly felt alive? And if you want to hear more stories like mine, real, raw, and honest hit, subscribe. Give this video a like and share it with someone who might be standing at their own quiet crossroad. Thank you for listening.